Go for it.
Hello, this is Alonzo Bodden. I want to welcome you to episode 341 of my podcast, Who's Paying Attention? Now, my guest today is a woman I have been pursuing for at least the past year. We tried to get her on the podcast, then we tried to get her on the radio show, and now we finally have her here in studio. She has the most brilliant, button-pushing, hot HBO special right now, along with everything else she does. Ladies and gentlemen, Aida Rodriguez is here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I used the word button pushing because I'm not sure how to describe it. I mean, it's obviously funny, but what you did in the special that I loved is you didn't just hit on topical stuff. You hit on topical stuff as it relates to you personally, because you have kind of a unique background, kind of a life. So can we talk about that? How did you intersect the two, your personal life and the bigger topical things going on?
So I think it's because I've been observing people, and we all operate from our own perception, and our perception is usually built by our own experiences. That I was like, what is going on in the world? Everybody's having these fights. We're having these culture wars. And then I just said, let me dig into why I feel the way that I feel about certain things. And so I wanted to show people the process. Like, that special was really hard for me to do. It was during COVID. And one of the things that I did not allow them to do was put laugh tracks in my special. I wanted people to see when the audience didn't react favorably to some of the jokes. I had better cuts, where the people were like, you do two shows and one show is better than the other. But I really wanted to maintain true. I wanted to keep true to people, to what I was saying. I wanted for people to see how we're all reacting, because the way that we react has everything to do with our own perception. And so when I said I was going to tell these jokes, I wanted to give a voice and make the people that raised me and where I come from visible, so that people will know that I am a sum total of my experiences and my background. And a lot of the things that I think were shaped by that. And if you multiply that by, whatever number of people there are on the planet, and you give them all a microphone, we're always going to be in a fight, right?
As Twitter has discovered. So to my audience, let me explain to you where this is in the world of comedy specials. Her special is an HBO special.
HBO MAX.
HBO MAX. That's the highest. With in the hierarchy, I've always thought, that there's Netflix, there's Showtime, which has been great to me. Showtime is good to me, but when you get into HBO or HBO Max, now you're getting to that tradition of people like George Carlin and Chris Rock. I always tell people, Chris Rock did an HBO special on Saturday, and Monday he was the funniest man in America. Like the impact of that. Was it intimidating to go to that platform versus a different platform?
Yeah, yes, it was. Because those are the same people who are my heroes in comedy. Like, I love George Carlin. I mean, that's one of my favorite comedians, and that's what I consider great, And so to sit amongst them, also to look around and look at the history and not see anyone like me there, was also very intimidating, and I felt kind of some pressure, because when you're the first to do something, it comes with, I don't know if it's self-imposed, but it feels like a lot of people are going to look at Latinx, Latinos, Latine people and say, oh, this is what they are.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
I mean, people do that because that's easy. But what I love, and you talk about this in the special, your background and people's perception, because you're Puerto Rican and Dominican, and they say, but you're a light-skinned black girl.
Yeah.
Like,
yes. And you know what? I really wanted to unpack that, because we have gotten into such BS. So many of us have these conversations within the Latino spectrum about, there's this aspiration to ascend as they classify it into whiteness. And there's a world of us who can never do that, no matter how much we try, because physically we just can't. Nobody will look at us and say, "Oh, I see you must be from Montana." So, so I wanted to cover that, and within the, it's funny. I get backlash from the Latinx community, because to them, they would say to me that I could be white presenting. And I'm like, where? But it's just because the conversation, we're just now breaking open that conversation, which Black people did 30 years ago, with Spike Lee's movie and the brown paper bag, and people talking about those things where, and still, everybody's battling it still, because colorism is real. But we weren't having those conversations. We were pretending like it wasn't happening.
Well, is part of that because the Latin or Latinx community has become more visible in the United States?
Yeah.
I mean, I joke about it that these old line white conservatives, right, they love the 50s, right? Because white men were in charge, white women stayed home, Black people were subservient, and Latin people did not exist. There was Ricky Ricardo. There was one Latin person in America, and he was married to Lucy.
And he looked white. He looked white. If he didn't open his mouth, he could pass. That's exactly right. And now that we are becoming more visible, our volcano is becoming more visible because we are, in this moment, which is it's a revolution for us to be able to have conversations about who we are, including indigenous people that make up such a big number of our group. And we, like I said, we were not having these conversations. People would say, we love Black people. We love our Black people. We love Puerto Ricans. We love Black people. And I'm like, you are Black people. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, it's interesting, especially when you mention Puerto Ricans. And I can just speak from back when I was in aerospace, I had a gig in Puerto Rico. I was in Puerto Rico for 5 months. And I told people, I said, listen, in New York, I was around Puerto Ricans and New Yorkers stuff. But when you go to the island of Puerto Rico, you literally see from Black people darker than me that look like this is a total Black person, to blonde-haired, blue-eyed, which would always blow my mind when Barbie started talking, and I was like, wait a minute, what? Dude, say that again. Puerto Rico is where everyone stopped on their way to the New World.
Yeah.
Right? So you have the full spectrum there.
Yeah, and it's and that is a reflection of our families. That's one of my jokes. Like, my brother, they call him Chino because he looks Asian, and because there is Asian blood in our family. And then, my sister's, she's more white passing. My brother looks like really, really Latino, and it's a reflection of that, what you just said. And so it's a very complicated conversation to have, because we have all these names like trigueño, mulata, moreno. We got all these words. We just don't want to say Black.
Right. So you have that. You have the Puerto Rican culture and the Dominican culture, which, again, I know this coming from New York. Once you leave at the East Coast, people don't really understand that Latino countries have their own identities, and they are different. It's like, on a national scale, I used to do a joke about it all the time. It's like, look, either you're Puerto Rican or you're Mexican. Nobody's interested any more than that, But I know so you have that. You have the Puerto Rican thing, Dominican thing, the colorism, this and that. Then you decided you'd make it a little more difficult by adding being a woman.
Yep.
What is the hell's wrong with you? Why can you not do anything easy? What's wrong with you?
Oh, man, because it's all the intersectionality, as the kids would say. I think, specifically coming from my culture, where my family members who are men are active sexists, and they take pride in it because...
You hilariously talk about your dad with that.
Yeah, he's a mess. And he thinks that, he was so proud of being... a womanizer. Like, he just really was. And I thought it would be important to talk about that, because from my personal experience as a stand-up comedian, I know that when I go on the road, my biggest concern is not getting paid, it's just not getting killed. And that's just something that all women can relate to. And I wanted to talk about it because I think that, I like to talk about the tough stuff. That feeds me.
Yeah, but I mean, that makes it real. Like, and again, I did notes and stuff, so things that I identified with. And one thing you talked about and I was laughing out loud because you talked about dating men, right? And the womenizing men and the this and that, and then how, I don't remember how you said it, but you said, no, date a gargoyle because they won't cheat on you. They'll this. And I literally have a friend, and she told me, she said, from now on, I'm only going out with trolls. I do not want anybody I want a troll who will love me to death, right? So, I mean, it's real. It's real.
It's life. And if you've ever been on Hinge, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's just, the thing is that, yes, we have these uncomfortable conversations. And I think now, because we are being so monitored by making sure that we're not saying things that are politically incorrect or problematic or sensitive, we're not having nuanced conversations. And that is the reality of what it is to be a woman in my group. And that's not me talking on behalf of all women, but those are conversations we have. And like, my girlfriends are like, yo, I'm dating the closest thing to a monk that wants to have sex with a woman. Like that. These are actual conversations. Like, I don't want anybody who's the best at anything. If he's a barber, I don't want the best barber, because they also have, they got women. Like, I want the mediocre dude at work. That's a guy that I want. I want him to excel at me.
Do you know how much hope you're giving men right now? The guys who figure they have no chance. It's like, that's fantastic. This is information. You know what this is? This is information men need in their teens.
Yes.
Right? And when you're the nerd or you're the this or the that, and you need this information from a grown woman saying, stick around, you're gonna be all right.
You're gonna be all right, because eventually
let him run now. You be all right.
All the girls who want that bad boy, when they get tired, they're gonna go around they're gonna be like, yo, let's go to Walmart, let's see who's working the floor. That's
now you also talked about, and again, I could talk to you about this special easily.
Well, that's a compliment, because
I
think you're a great comic.
Thank you. I love this. But you talked about not being politically correct and this and that. Just so you know, and I'm giving teases. I'm not giving spoilers. But you mentioned punching woke people in the mouth. I would say that that's not politically correct. You also recommended that complainers can let's see, have a special snack.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. But I love that, because you challenge them. You're like, no, not only will I not capitulate to you, I stand up to you. I call you out, because it's not what you're saying, it's what the problem isn't what you're saying, problem's what they're hearing.
Yeah. And the thing is that this performative stuff that has kind of like blown up in the last couple of years, where people get to put their Black Lives Matter pin on and say, I'm with the cause. It's very reminiscent of, it's like the pink ribbon of now. Like, people will put on their pink ribbon, they gave their $10 and that, hey, I participated in the cure for breast cancer. I think that if we're going to be comedians, and in the likeness of the comedians that I respect and love, we got to call it all out, right? We can't just preach to the choir. And so I think it's important that we talk about these performative liberals who allegedly, are for the cause, but don't realize how racist they are in their own, practices. It's very easy to say, I'm a liberal, I think gay people should get married, that Black Lives Matter, but you will never lay down your privilege to create equity for somebody else. And so for me, it's like, I don't care if you got on a button, if you got the thing on your window. What are you doing to create space for other people? Because that's what it's going to take. That's what it took for civil rights movement. It wasn't just Black people. It was white people out there that were like, this is enough. We got to fight for this.
Because they have the power.
Absolutely.
The people who have the power need to open the doors.
Yeah.
And it's happening more now, I think, because a lot of people of color are now getting the power. Like you mentioned Spike Lee. Spike Lee's been a thorn in the foot of Hollywood.
Yes.
Since his second movie.
Yep.
And he has never stopped, even though he's done other films. Like a friend of mine just did a commercial with him. You know, he does those hilarious commercials with Charles Barkley and Samuel Jackson. Like he's shown that side of him, but when there's something to say, he will still stand up and say it, and he has a voice. So let me ask you this, because this has come up with me, because, you know, we both do topical stuff, and we're both invited on those commentary shows, even though you said you're not doing it anymore, and I want to talk to you about that. But I have said that I don't believe the cancel thing. Like, I joke that I wish I could get canceled. Like, there's a lot of talk about it, but the reality is they're not shutting anybody up, and if they do, it's a publicity move, right, to get canceled. Like, there's been, you know, 2 or 3 people whose careers were put on hold, not ended, just put on hold for a while. But others, Kathy Griffin said, never sold as many tickets as she did once she got canceled.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the, you know, that's why I didn't use the word cancel and cancel culture like in the special, and I used woke, because I was directly addressing those people who really think that they're on our side. Because the cancel culture is...
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to ask this question because it's a part of what you're talking about. Are they doing their best?
No.
Okay.
No, they're doing the minimum to appear like they're... And I'm not talking about them all. Some people are trying their best and they don't know. And those are the people that are like, I need the information. I don't understand. What does it mean? Am I being racist when I say this? I have people in my life that do that. But there are people that are like, bottom line, I'm one of them. You know what I'm saying? I'm standing on the front lines during the Black Lives Matter march. I am here. I think George Floyd. And I'm like, do you know how long this has been going on? You just got on the train and you think you got all the answers? We don't even have all the answers.
That is true. It is something that, and I've always said, you know, the people who this is hardest on, my parents' generation. I've lost both my parents, but because they fought these exact same fights in the 60s.
Of course.
And they thought it was done. They thought it was done, and now they're watching everything they did, even voting rights. They're watching that be unwound. Now, what I do like in the voting world is the harder you try to stop people from voting, the more determined they are to vote. This is where the right wing is really stupid. It's like, keep making it hard and watch how much longer the lines are, because the more difficult you make it, the more they step up. Do you think the next generation, my hope is not millennials, not Gen X, but the following one, Z. And I always say it's a shame that they went X, Y, Z, which shows they didn't really have a long-term plan. So whoever's coming after Z, I don't know what we're going to call you, but I think they're the hope. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think that they're not so concerned with cancel culture. They do say things that are challenging the millennial mindset. They are the ones that are fighting and saying, burn it down. They're the ones that saying, no, this is not marching. We got to burn it down. We got to attack these institutions and they're smart. They're really smart. They're young. They're not falling into the trap into believing that the only future that they have is going to college and going in debt. They are challenging all of the systems, and I do think that there is hope. And they're not going around saying, hey, we're not getting the pronouns right, and this is African American versus Black. They're like, y'all can call us whatever y'all want. We want our just due. And so, yes, I do think there's hope with them because they are relentless and they're fearless, and they dare to question the systems where we've been focusing on each other for so long. And they're like, you know what? What's up with Wells Fargo? What's up with them?
Yeah, well, they're more connected.
Yes.
Right, and the connection they have has dropped a lot of barriers we had with color, sexual orientation, gender. All they're like, now we're beyond that. We're us.
Yeah.
You know, I wish them luck. I honestly would. Listen, I would. it's almost now, I don't even know how many years ago, I told him to start killing old people. I told him,
I
that's your hope.
remember that.
Remember that? I told him, start killing old people. Like, listen, and I'm one of them. Like, when you get to me, it's like, well, I understand, but this is the plan I gave you, and if you want to own a house one day, your grandfather's friends are going to have to go, okay? Not your grandfather, but his friends.
I remember.
You don't know them. Right. So, and you talked about that. Yeah, I love your generational thing with your mom hit you in the throat, and then you got your kids. So once again, you're living it.
Yeah, I am living it. I'm living it. And what's funny is that I talk about this. I was writing about it yesterday. I was taught so many problematic things that were considered problematic that kept me out of harm's way. And it's so funny how it worked. It worked in a way that I wouldn't have it any other way. My family wasn't perfect. They weren't the most educated people. My grandmother came here from Puerto Rico. She didn't know how to read. She didn't know how to write. But the lessons that she gave me are the lessons that I've had to go to survive now. And it's not what I learned at Florida State. It's not the Pythagorean theorem. It's nothing like that. It's what my grandmother told me that somebody would hear now and be like, oh my God, I can't believe she said that. I remember being told, like when I was 12, penis and alcohol ages you. Proceed accordingly. And I took that to heart. Like, I was like, what? Like,
that's great.
But that was something that would be considered problematic now. It would be slut shaming. It would be whatever it is. And it was just, she was saying everything in moderation, even that.
Right.
And that was, I thought about it, and I wouldn't drink a lot because I was like, I'm not going to get a facelift. I don't like surgery. I don't like needles. Let me put this drink down. That it just, and so that's just a very ridiculous example, but I was taught by the best, and the best is not what your best looks like.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of those old school things, they learned the hard way. Like the one thing that has changed that I wish had been different when I grew up, my dad was from Honduras.
I know.
And he came to the United States.
You one of us.
I am. But what happened, he came at a time, 1939, you dropped your culture.
That's right.
And they just looked at him and like, oh, you're black. And we were raised that way. And that is something I wish I'd had, just to be bilingual. Just that talent is, and you've heard me and I've joked about this, the racist, and it's like, you're talking about this Latin, they can speak two languages, you idiot. Not only can they speak, they can think in two languages. Do you know how much smarter they are than you? Even if they didn't do anything else, that's something you could never, and you're talking down to them. Then they're insulting you in a language you don't understand, you idiot. So that is something that now I think is great, that people are embracing their culture, and you're still American.
Absolutely, and that's a full-time job, right? Holding on to your culture and traditions from where you came, and then creating your American persona because you also sow into the soil of this land it's such a it's a burden sometimes. You come from Honduras, like where the Garifunas come from, like some of the most glorious people, super connected still to the culture that many of us envy. Like they took our names and they gave us these surnames. People are like saying, they're like, oh, you're Rodriguez, you got a spicy last name. I'm like, yeah, that's one of the most notorious colonizers in the history of Spain. Like, that's not my last name. And so I just think that, those are the things. We work this full-time job where we work overtime because I was born in Boston. When Donald Trump got elected, I got several people who tweeted me telling me, guess who's getting deported? And I was like, I was born in one of the most American cities in America. Like, deported where?
Yeah,
like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, again, it's you guys do understand Puerto Rico's part of the United States. Like,
also,
they don't even understand. It's such the level of ignorance, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but it's staggering.
Absolutely.
It's staggering.
It's scary because it's the number one threat to our freedom and democracy.
Absolutely. So I wanted to hit on two things, and then I want to get into some current stuff. But is there a group you won't make fun of?
Is there a group that I won't make fun of?
And
I don't know. I don't think. I mean, the thing is that I've done shows where there have been people in wheelchairs or blind people, which is the truth, and then they've been offended that I didn't include them. And they're like, I want to be in on the joke too. I'm a person. I know when you're being mean and I know when you're being funny.
Right.
So that's why I said I probably wouldn't. There are some things I don't think I can find the funny in, like sexual assault. But, you know, in They Ready, I made a joke about being molested. And a lot of people responded to that joke because they were like, thank you for seeing us. So I don't think so much it's subject matter, but intention. Like some people really, you've seen some of these lazy comics, they just want to punch down.
Well, the crowd, I've always said, and I'm the same way. I've made fun of blind people. There was a guy in a wheelchair I was making fun of, and I was like, what, if he chases me, I'll just walk up the stairs. And no one laughed harder at that than he did, because now he's a part of. I've always felt, and tell me what you think, that the crowd is like a dog in the sense that dogs can sense your intention.
Yes.
Dogs know good people from bad people.
Yeah.
The crowd, when you tell a joke like that about group whatever, they know whether or not you mean it, which is why Michael Richards was shut down immediately, whereas some other comics, you make fun of somebody in the crowd, whatever they are. The crowd knows. So when you do it, like if you do a joke about somebody or you do a joke about the sexual assault situation or whatever, they know you're not, attacking or, like you say, punching down or belittling people who have had this experience. You're like, yeah, this is it. And that's part of the art. The art is to not punch down, right? The art is to make the uncomfortable funny.
And that's what George Carlin said. He's like, it's easy to make fun of people who are beneath you. Like, that was one of the things. He's like, it's easy to make fun of gay people. It's easy to make fun of them. That's not hard. That's not comedy. That's bullying, right? Because the truth of it is that I am a Latina woman. According to statistics and data, I get paid less than everybody, right? I'm at the bottom of the food chain. And a white man in a wheelchair probably gets paid more than me. So and putting that into perspective, I mean, I don't ever think about talking about, when I really make fun of those people or I make fun of people that belong to certain groups, it comes from a place of inclusivity, because I really do. But I made a joke about Caitlyn Jenner, and I had two friends who are trans women that said to me that the joke was insensitive because it objectified. We had a conversation about it on my podcast, and it gave me a different perspective. I thought I was advocating for trans people by calling out Caitlyn Jenner, because I think Caitlyn Jenner is a grifter, because Caitlyn Jenner came along and pulled the trans card and then rolled over into elitist land and became a Trump supporter and could care less about, the trans people who are getting murdered and who are poor and don't have the privileges to kill somebody and not go to jail. So then I sat there and I was like, it was coming from that. But then they said to me, hey, but look, it objectifies this. And I was like, all right, I could go write another joke. Like, my intention wasn't this is not the hill I'm going to die on, because it's not what I was intending, and the way you received it was differently. And I don't want to attack your humanity. I don't get anything from it. And I don't feel like I was being bullied by them. I thought they were really just like, you could keep saying the joke, but this is why I think it's problematic. Yeah.
And sometimes that happens. And you know what? Sometimes some people are going to get hurt, but that's okay.
Yes.
If it's like, listen, we can't break them down for every individual group. I
got people walked out of my show because I was making fun of my daughter for losing races, right? And I had a joke. I was a single mom. It was expensive for her to run for this track team. Her track team cost more than my car payment, and I did not want to go home with participation ribbons. And so I had a joke about it, and they wrote a note card, and they said they thought I was being mean and insensitive, and what kind of a mother was I? And I'm like, why are you at a comedy show?
You're a terrible mother. That's well known. It's well known.
I know.
Any stand-up, any woman who's a comic is a terrible mother. I've had Laurie Kilmartin on. She's a horrible mother.
She's amazing, Mom.
Tammy Pescatelli, terrible mother. You're all horrible.
I know.
At what you do. But it's hilarious, so it's okay.
I race valedictorians and scholarship recipients and college graduates. I know I'm a terrible mom.
So, getting into one, and again, people who are listening, everything we've talked about is in her special. I just want you to know that every topic you have heard us talk about so far is in her special. And that's why the special is so brilliant, because it hits on all of these different things, which I love. Now, you said in the special that you're not doing political commentary anymore. I know we cross paths on Young Turks and NPR and a bunch of other stuff. Were you joking or are you serious? Are you not doing those anymore? I'm
taking a break. It was very taxing for me. Even with my own podcast, which you were on more than once, it's that I could have somebody come there to talk about jelly beans. And by the end of the podcast, they'd be like, "They're more white jelly beans than black jelly beans." And every single episode turned into a debate about race. And it becomes overwhelming. And it was starting to mess with my ability to be a comedian, because I wanted to write jokes about this. But I was in my head so much about, was I saying the right thing? How factual? And I had to step away from it for a while. In addition to, I wanted to be part of solutions. And I may not be as visible as I was or as vocal, but I am far more active in actually participating in things for change. And that was something that I figured out, that a lot of these people, they do a lot of talking and a lot of flexing, and they're very vocal, and they clap back and they own a person, but they're doing nothing to improve the conditions of people in this country. And I had to refocus and say, yeah, this is my form of activism and this is the way I show up. But being who I am and being true to who I am, I want to actually do stuff.
Well, you just described me, because I'm all in on dogs. I will help dogs. Humans, no, I'll just criticize them.
Love it.
Dogs, I'll step up my game.
Aw, they matter.
I love dogs. Love my dog. So that being said, I'm going to hit you with this, only because I don't understand. And so maybe you have some understanding on this, because I truly don't understand. The right wing, the Republican Party, and politicizing COVID to the point of, like, I don't understand what's your end game. Like I said this out there, and I said, would you be happy if no one was vaccinated? Like, is that what you want? So now, just two quick things from, my news feed, right? Another conservative activist, and they drop like flies. Okay, so here's another one. What's her name? Kelly. What's Kelly's name? Kelly Cannon, a conservative activist in Texas, went to an anti-vax, quote, symposium, which had to be fun to listen, came home, died of COVID, and what all the right-wingers said is, it's tragic she died from pneumonia. So now when they say the big lie, well, there's two of them. There's the Trump election lie, but this COVID thing. And then there was another article about these masks. And this, I've always said that they're like children. This company, it's called the Unmask. It's a fake mask, basically. It looks like a mask. It's like, what do you think is their end game? What would make them? They're very angry people. They're always looking for a fight.
Right.
What do you think would make them happy?
What's funny is I read this article that was talking about, it was called Owning the Libs. And it was about how these people who don't believe in COVID and don't take vaccinations or won't get vaccinated feel like they're owning the libs by not doing it. But the numbers in the red states of deaths are much higher than in the blue states. Absolutely. So who's actually owning who? Because therein the voting is, dropping because you guys are dropping like flies. I honestly think we have a serious education problem in this country. And, when I watched Don't Look Up, people have got way deeper than it needed to be. But I was like, if you think about the people in parts of the country who are not getting a decent education, who don't have the ability to critically think for themselves, they were too busy working, too busy surviving, too busy trying to figure out how they're going to eat. They don't have health care. And all of the information that they're receiving is from clicking on articles and, people who are appealing to them emotionally. But because they don't have the reasoning skills, they can't go get the information that they need to make decisions for themselves. That is what's killing us. And, the ignorance is astounding. I listen to some people that I know, and I am like, where did you get that from? Like, and it's because they just, that's a big problem. And FDR said it in a more eloquent way that the biggest threat to our democracy is a lack of education. And you think about these people, and it's like, they don't have the goods because no matter what you tell them, they don't have the critical thinking skills where the logic sets in, and they're like, oh, that makes sense. You get a virus, and then you got to watch,
But is it that, and I think that's very generous of you.
Oh.
I do. Because I say, no, they could understand it, but they're so vested in the hatred and the anger that they won't listen. And and this is why I call it a cult. Because all of their leaders are vaccinated. Okay,
Yeah.
let's put that down first. All of their leaders are vaccinated.
Absolutely.
And they have a vaccine against the measles. Their dog, okay, my dog can't go to the boarding place without the rabies vaccine and the distemper vaccine, and they do that. So what you're saying is, I'm like, no, they understand what a vaccine does, and this is, I joke about this, but this is the logic. This is what they believe. Okay, like, I used to smoke. I smoked cigarettes for 30 years. So if I crash and die on my motorcycle, it's because I was vaccinated.
It's funny.
And they'll be like, damn right, see that vaccine.
But that's ignorance, though. That's it.
But it's willful ignorance. You are volunteering. And we're going to jump into this Rand Paul, Dr. Fauci thing, which we talked about a little off air before. But Fauci called out Rand Paul because Rand Paul claimed that millions of people died because of Fauci, and they hinted Fauci was in on creating the virus at the lab in China and this and that. And then what Fauci called out Rand Paul, he said, hey, there was a man who was arrested in Utah who was on his way to Washington, D.C. He had an AR-15 in the car, loaded magazine. They said, where are you going? He said, to kill Dr. Fauci. And on Rand Paul's website, underneath all the false narratives about COVID and the vaccine, is a donate button. And Fauci said, you're actually using disinformation to make money for yourself.
Of course.
You're saying that these people aren't educated enough, not smart enough. I say no. They willfully believe this, just like when they said that, all Mexicans are rapists and dope dealers. Like, in spite of the fact that they know Mexican people or whatever, they decided, I'll believe that. Like,
well, I think a racist is a racist is a racist. And if he knows how to read or not, he's still a racist. But and all he needs is a reason. But I just think that even when I talk to people in my family, people from my hometown that I know, that are good people, but the way they get their information and the stuff that they've been, I'm like, where did you read that? Like, where did you get that information? And I don't think it's that they intentionally want to be evil. I think they're ignorant and they're scared. And so, the internet is the devil.
Yeah, the internet is the best and worst. But why? And you have to answer this for all of humanity. That's why I brought you here. Why are people anxious to believe the most ridiculous conspiracy theory versus science?
Because everything that is ridiculous has supporting data on the internet. And it is the hardest thing to dispute. And if you tell somebody who's been told they're not that smart, they're dumb, they're trying to prove their point, they're going to go find, I can find anything to support some of the most ridiculous things that I've heard on the World Wide Web. And these people who are not, they go to school. They're not getting the education. They're not getting the basics, like the fundamentals, as they say in basketball. This is what you do when you want to find something out. You got to go read about this. You got to read both sides about it, the pros and the cons. You got to study. You got to do the research. Look at the studies. Look at the people who said it. Look up the people who said it and see who those people are. Ain't nobody doing that anymore.
You are far more generous as a person than I am. When the anti-vaxxers want to argue with me, I say, I'm going to give it 2 years, and then we won't have to argue with you anymore.
I don't argue with them, though.
No, I understand what you're saying. I personally, I think it's willful ignorance. I think these people aren't. There are a few who are that ignorant, but most aren't. They choose to believe, and they're so vested in this Republican Party.
I agree with you, though.
That even though they know better, they have to believe it because I'm all in on the cult.
No, I agree. I agree. It's connected to I hate Mexicans, black people burn stuff down.
Right.
Yeah, it's all connected. Women that wear short skirts.
Talking back. Yeah. Women with their talk. Yeah, that's right. Women with short skirts. They were asking for it.
Yeah. So that's all connected to. Absolutely, I agree with you. It's part of the doctrine of the church, right? These are the things that you believe. These are your commandments, and so absolutely. But it's a whole lot of ignorance in that. Because I read a Donald Trump book before Donald Trump became the president, The Art of the Deal, which is the book that you don't see. The Art of the Comeback, because it's the book that talks about how much he failed, right? And you never hear about that book, right? You hear about the Art of the Deal.
He failed on everything he touched.
Absolutely. And there's a book about it, right?
Everything he touched.
And so I used to read that, and I would sit there and I watched him in I remember watching him in Home Alone. You would never tell me that this man was going to be president. But when I watched him in The Apprentice, there is no way I'm going to follow that man anywhere, right? I sit here and I look and I'm like, yo, this man is really the president of the United States. We fell off.
There's a group called Living Color. I don't know if you remember them. They were a black rock group.
Oh, yeah. Cult of Personality.
90s. That song, that whole album, but that song, they were so far ahead of their time.
Yeah.
He won because of the cult of personality, and I used to do a joke. I said, listen, Donald Trump bankrupted casinos.
Yeah, he did.
Think about having a business that people walk in the door with a handful of money saying, I can lose this. They actually, the casino's the only place you take money, Ida. You take money there that you know you're going to lose. How are you saying, I don't know how to make this work. People are coming in the door with money to lose to me, yet somehow I can't make this work.
It's funny because it's true. But you think about these people who say that's our guy. And it had been in the making for a long time.
Absolutely.
Either you like Rihanna or you like Beyonce. Like we become these. It's just that they were conditioning people for it.
Not only that, and somebody said this recently, and I've been laughing ever since they said it. They were like, remember the good old days when Sarah Palin was crazy?
Yes.
like that kind of, like she's quaint now. With the kind of crazy we have now, we'd be like, oh, remember Sarah?
Yeah,
she was.
She makes Marjorie Taylor Greene look like Gaddafi.
Right. So enough of that. This is something I try to do on every podcast. Okay. I always ask my guests to help me with this.
Okay.
Give me some good news. Anything. Just something good, something positive that's going on. And by the way, I want to make a shout out now. Speaking of good news and only the good die young, Bob Saget. Tragic to lose such a great guy, great comic, funny, humble, kind, any positive thing. And the funniest thing about him, vanilla on screen, absolute filth in a club.
Blue as well. Yeah.
So we're sorry to lose Bob Saget. Now that being said, give us some good news.
Well, part of my good news is that I got a chance to talk to him before he passed away. And that for me was a great thing because I had never really I had encountered him, but I never really talked to him. And I was on his podcast, but we had a conversation, and it was a really good conversation because he actually really watched my special as well, and he broke it down, and he was like, I think you're a light And I want the world to know who you are, and I'm so happy that I got to talk to you, and I'm going to come see you. He was going to come see me in March at Mohegan Sun. So for me, you know, the way I believe, what I believe is that when we die, we graduate. And so I think it's a blessing, even though it's hard for us who are here because we mourn for ourselves. But I'm glad to have met someone who had such a positive impact on people, because before he passed away, and people that I knew that knew him all said good things about him.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, after somebody passes away, everybody's good. But before... And so it was great to meet. You know, comedy's so cynical, and people can be so negative and envious and hateful, and some of your favorite comedians are the worst people. They're trash in person, and you get around them and you feel the bitterness and entitlement. And so it's good to meet someone who just ran from goodness. And I feel so thankful that I was able to have that exchange, not knowing how many days he had left, and that there was a little time that was carved out for me with him, because he really made an impact. That he made me feel good about going back out to do stand-up, because I had not done stand-up in like 2 or 3 months.
That's beautiful. That is great. I will take that as good news. And I like what you said about when you die, you graduate. That's a nice thought, a nice sentiment. You know, the interesting thing about him, that this is what's, I'm going to use the word funny because it is, comics don't die at 65. Comics either die young or live forever, right? Like either you're in your 50s, or, you know, like Betty White, you're 99, you know? So yeah, it was totally, it caught the comedy world off guard. It really did. I think. And
he did a 2-hour set that night.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is beautiful when you go out doing what you love.
Yeah.
I had another friend, Kenny Bob Davis. Kenny Bob was old school country western comic, and like he did a show on Saturday night and he drove home Sunday and he passed away on Monday. And I said he'd have been happy with that. Like he'd have been happy. Like that's how a comic goes out, you know. But yeah, I got to work with. I got to open for Saget a couple of times, and just, like I say, genuine and humble. He loved comedy, but it was also the fact that he could laugh at himself. That's what I loved about him. Like all the jokes about him being the luckiest guy in the world and this and that. And I love that about him. And so comedy, we missed this one.
Yes.
We missed this one. This one hit us. It's not the celebrity dying. This was more of a personal thing, I think, to lose Bob Saget. So what you said, the fact that he carved out that time, and the fact that he's helping you do stand-up, to me, that's great. That's phenomenal. You know, we also talked about this a little off air about the inspiration. And, you know, you were talking about a woman who wrote to you that was inspired by reading or seeing you, hearing your words.
Yeah.
We get to do that. It is humbling,
yes,
and unusual,
and rewarding
when they do. Absolutely rewarding, and that's one of the great parts of what we get to do.
Absolutely, and voicing things for people who don't have the mic.
So let me wrap up by saying you do that.
Oh, thank you.
This special, I mean, honestly, that's what I think. The relatability of the special, the honesty of the special, is what makes it relatable, and it's hella funny. Don't let me step over that and get all deep.
Thank you.
You know, I'm not. let me become an art critic. Yeah, right. No, you will laugh your ass off, and you know, if you smoke weed, you can smoke weed and watch this.
Yes,
you can smoke weed and watch it. It's not so deep. You can't be, man, I'm high, I missed it. No, you can get high and enjoy. Have a good time, people, with Aida Rodriguez and her HBO Max special. It is hilarious. Aida, thank you so much. There's so much.
Thank you for having me.
There's so much to you, and I love that.
Ditto.
Thank you. And I do remember a conversation we had at the Just for Laughs in Montreal. It was me, you, Wanda, and I think Kira Sultanovich, and we were talking about comedy and women in comedy.
Yes.
And just know that I still think it's ridiculous, the idea that women are separate in comedy and all of that. But I will say, I love that we have your voice.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really do. I love that we have your voice, and keep doing what you do, and traveling and doing it live and staying safe. When you're in the red states, don't breathe. That's what I do. I don't breathe in red states. I only breathe in blue states, and then I bring my own air when I go to the red states. And all the good people in the red states, I love you. But I'm sorry, I can't,
That thing is out there. Omarion is dancing on all of our bags.
All of us. I have a live show coming up January 21st, 22nd. I will be at the Grand Comedy Club in Escondido, California, right outside of San Diego. Do you have anything you want to plug?
I'll be at Caroline's the last week of February. That's where I saw you with my children, and they said he is one of the funniest. The last weekend of February, and then the first weekend of March, where Bob Saget was going to come see me, I will be at Comics at Mohegan Sun.
That's awesome. Heading to the East Coast. All right. Thank you, Aida. And to everyone listening, thank you guys. Who's paying attention? You are, and I appreciate it.
That's dope.